My name is James, and if there was ever any doubt about where I stood in my family, that doubt vanished the day I stumbled upon the will. It wasn't some dramatic reveal with my parents sitting me down to break the news. No, I found out entirely by accident, purely by dumb luck. This all went down a few months ago when I was at their house, the same house I'd been helping to pay for over the last 5 years. I'd been the one managing the mortgage, running errands for groceries, even fixing things around the house. All the while, my brother Ron did absolutely nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. No job, no sense of responsibility, just lounging around, waiting for life to serve him everything on a silver platter. Apparently, my parents were more than happy to comply. That day, I was at the kitchen table with my dad, sorting through paperwork, because as usual, neither of them could be bothered to take care of anything themselves. He asked me to help him go through a bunch of legal and financial documents, which was nothing out of the ordinary. I was in the middle of flipping through it when I saw something that made my heart stop. Tucked in the pile was a folder labeled Estate Plan and Last Will and Testament. I didn't typically pry, but curiosity got the better of me. After all, I had been the one making sure they had a roof over their heads. It wasn't totally out of line to want to know how things were going to be handled when the time came. So, I opened it, and that's when I saw the words that sent a cold wave of anger through me. Everything, every single thing. The house, their savings, all of their assets, all of it was going to Ron. Not a single mention of me, except for some vague line about how they loved both their sons equally. Right, equally. If that's what equal looked like, then I must have been living in some alternate universe. They'd made sure the golden child would inherit everything, while I, the one actually keeping them afloat, didn't even get a mention. I felt like an idiot. Here I was, bending over backward to take care of them, making sure their bills were paid, ensuring they never went hungry, while they were planning a future where I didn't even exist. And Ron? He wasn't just lazy, he was entitled. He never helped out, never contributed a dime, but somehow he had convinced them that he deserved everything. Maybe it was because he was the youngest. Maybe it was because they'd always treated him like their baby. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because he knew exactly how to manipulate them into getting what he wanted. Whatever the reason, the decision had been made. I sat there, staring at the will, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and betrayal. How long had they been planning this? Had they always intended for me to be nothing more than their free financial safety net, with no acknowledgement in return? Did they ever even appreciate the sacrifices I made for them? I had no idea how long I had been sitting there, but eventually my dad noticed I hadn't scanned a single thing. "Hey, James, what's taking so long?" he called out, walking into the room. Without thinking, I didn't try to hide it. I held up the will and locked eyes with him. "So, this is how it is?" I said, my voice calm, almost eerily so. "Everything goes to Ron, after everything I've done for you?" My dad's face went pale for a brief moment before he let out a long, tired sigh, as if I were just some child throwing a tantrum. "James, it's not what you think," he muttered. "Really?" I snapped, voice sharp. "Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I've been paying your mortgage, handling the groceries, fixing up the house while Ron does nothing, and yet you've decided he's the only one who matters?" Dad shifted uncomfortably, but instead of explaining himself or offering some semblance of an apology, he muttered, "It's complicated." That was it. No explanation, no justification, just two useless words. It was just a flimsy excuse paired with an expectant look, as if he was hoping I'd just forget it all and go back to being their personal ATM. I should have walked out the moment I saw that look, but I needed to hear it from both of them. So I called for my mom. When she came in and saw the will in my hands, her reaction wasn't much better. At least she had the decency to look guilty, but the words that followed made my blood boil. "James, honey, you don't need the inheritance," she said softly, like she was doing me a favor. "You've got a good job. You're independent. Ron, well, he's struggling. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." That was when something inside me finally broke. They weren't even pretending to deny it. They knew exactly what they were doing, and in their minds, it was entirely justified. They'd spent years enabling Ron's laziness, and now they were ready to reward it by handing him everything while I was discarded like an afterthought. I took a deep breath, gritted my teeth, and placed the will on the table. Got it, I said, my voice eerily calm. Glad to know where we stand. Then I turned and walked out of the house, tuning out their protests as I slammed the door behind me. They'd made their choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I never went back to their house after that. I didn't call, I didn't check in. For the first time in years, I let them deal with their own damn problems. If they needed something fixed, they could figure it out. If they needed groceries, they could get themselves to the store. And most importantly, if that mortgage bill showed up, well, I wasn't the one paying it anymore. The silence lasted about 2 weeks. At first, I think they figured I was just sulking and would eventually come crawling back like I always did. Maybe they thought I'd cool off and apologize for daring to question their decision. But as the days passed without a word from me, and more importantly, no financial support, the shift in their attitude was palpable. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. Dad had texted, "The property taxes are due." That was it. No, "Hey, how have you been?" No, "Sorry for what happened." No, "We really appreciate everything you've done." Just a cold, transactional message, as if I were still the walking bank they could tap into whenever they needed. I stared at the screen for a moment, almost amused at how predictable they were. Did they really think they could just demand money like nothing had changed? That I'd keep playing my role as their financial safety net, even after they made it clear I was disposable? I calmly typed back, "I'm sure Ron will handle it since the house is his and all." It took exactly 5 minutes before my mom called. I let it ring. Then another text came through. Mom texted, "James, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to talk? Now that their bills were piling up and reality was finally smacking them in the face? I waited an hour before replying. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you can live with it." I thought that would be the end of it for the day. I had made my stance crystal clear, and not a single part of me felt guilty about it. But then Ron decided to weigh in. His text came late that evening, and the moment I saw his name pop up on my phone, I knew it was going to be something obnoxious. Sure enough, when I opened it, I was greeted with pure entitlement. Ron texted, "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do." I nearly laughed. Not a big deal? He really thought I had no right to be furious about this. I typed back, "Nah, I think you've got it handled. After all, you're the favorite, right?" Ron responded almost immediately, "Oh my God, are you seriously upset about the will? Grow up, man. It's just money." Oh, now it was just money. Funny how it didn't matter anymore, now that he stood to inherit it. The hypocrisy was mind-blowing. I shot back, "Then you won't mind using some of that money to help cover the mortgage, will you?" Silence. A few minutes later, my mom texted again, and this time she was laying it on thick with the guilt trip. Mom texted, "James, we're your parents. Family is supposed to take care of each other. We did so much for you when you were growing up, and now you're just abandoning us." I had to take a deep breath to stop myself from throwing my phone across the room. Abandoning them? I had spent years ensuring they never had to worry about anything while they showered Ron with praise and rewarded his laziness. And now that they were finally facing the consequences of their own poor choices, I was the villain. Not this time. I wasn't buying into it. I responded, "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Ron can take care of you." I could almost hear my mom gasping in shock. She always had a knack for playing the victim, even when she was the one at fault. A few minutes later, my dad sent me another message, and this one hit me like a punch in the gut. Dad texted, "We're not asking for much, just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish." Selfish? The word made my blood boil. I had spent years bailing them out, giving up my own time, money, and energy to make their lives easier. I had done everything any decent son would do, and how did they repay me? By making sure I was left with nothing. And now, when I was finally standing up for myself, I was the selfish one. I clenched my jaw, took a slow, deep breath, and typed back, "No, I'm done." Then I turned off my phone. They had made their choice, and now they'd have to live with it. The silence stretched on for an entire day. I knew my parents wouldn't give up that easily, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The following morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone, a bank transfer request. I frowned, unlocking my phone to check. It was from my mom. She had actually sent me a request for money, as if I were her personal ATM. The amount? $3,500. I stared at the request in disbelief, almost laughing at the sheer audacity of it. There was no message, no explanation, just a cold, shameless demand for the exact amount they needed to cover their overdue mortgage. They weren't even asking anymore. They were just assuming I'd give in. I declined it immediately. Not 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. I let it ring. Then came another text. Mom texted, "James, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it?" I took my time before replying, "Because it's not my responsibility. Try Ron." Another call. Declined. Then came yet another text. Mom texted, "We're going to lose the house if you don't help us." Oh, now it was an emergency? After all those years of treating me like an endless source of cash, now they were finally facing the consequences of their actions? I typed back, "Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided I didn't matter." A few seconds later, Dad joined the conversation. Dad texted, "You're really going to let your parents end up homeless?" I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost comical. They weren't broke. They weren't about to be thrown out onto the streets. They just didn't want to dip into their own savings because they had gotten so used to me, covering their every need. I tuned them out for the remainder of the day. That evening, a text from Ron lit up my phone. "Dude, just send them the money already. You're making this way more complicated than it is." My teeth ground together. This arrogant little prick actually thought he could lecture me? I quickly typed a reply. "You mean the same money you're about to inherit? Why don't you send it?" His response came almost immediately. "You know I don't have that kind of cash right now." Oh, so now it was about money issues? He had no problem with me emptying my accounts, but as soon as it was his turn to contribute, suddenly he had no money to spare. I fired back, "Guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they picked." No reply. I put my phone down, feeling an odd sense of relief, like I had just cut ties with years of emotional manipulation. But the next day, it all spiraled out of control. I was at work when I got a call from the front desk of my building. "Hey, James, your parents are here?" I nearly dropped my phone. "What?" I stammered. There was a long pause, and then she added, "They say it's an emergency and that you won't answer their calls." Oh, my God, they actually showed up at my apartment because I stopped paying their bills? I took a slow breath, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting them." There was an awkward silence on the other end. "They're being kind of pushy." I gritted my teeth. "I don't care. Tell them to leave." I hung up, and almost immediately, my phone buzzed again. "Mom." "We're downstairs. Open the door. No question, no explanation, just another demand." I didn't respond. Another text from her. "James, we're not leaving until you talk to us." I let out a deep breath and stood up from my desk. They weren't going to give up. Fine. I was about to show them something they wouldn't forget. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of my office, my blood boiling. I wasn't afraid. I was angry. The nerve of these people to show up uninvited, demanding money like I was their personal ATM. Not even a call first. Not even an apology. Just a full-on ambush. They honestly thought they could corner me like I was some naive kid. I swung the door open. And there they were. Mom, Dad, and of course Ron, standing in a tight little formation like they were about to have some family intervention. Mom was standing there with her arms crossed, her disappointed mother look in full effect. Dad was rigid, his hands shoved in his pockets, his face a mix of frustration and entitlement, as though he couldn't believe I was actually forcing him to do this in person. And Ron, the little parasite, had the nerve to look bored, like this whole thing was only a minor inconvenience for him, as if he wasn't the reason any of this was happening. As soon as Mom saw me, she went into full dramatics. "James, finally, we need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "No, you need to leave." She blinked, as if the words didn't make sense to her. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." My voice was cool, controlled, but unwavering. "You don't get to show up at my apartment and demand money. That's insane." Dad scoffed sharply. "Are you seriously going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge?" I let out a cold laugh. "Petty grudge? Oh, you mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills but not good enough to be in your will? That grudge? Mom gasped, clutching her chest as if I'd slapped her. James, that's not fair. We only did what we thought was best for the family. I tilted my head, eyeing her. Best for the family? You mean best for Ron? Just say it. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Ron, who had been strangely quiet up until now, finally spoke up. Look, man, I don't even want to be involved in this. I didn't ask for anything. I turned to him, finally snapping. No, you just sit there and take everything handed to you. You're 28 years old, Ron. Get a damn job. His face flushed with anger. Dude, what the hell? He muttered. I stepped closer, making sure he could hear every word clearly. You heard me. If you want the house, start acting like you deserve it. If you want to be the golden child, start paying their damn bills. I'm done being your personal ATM. Ron's gaze shifted to the pavement, suddenly very interested in the cracks beneath his feet. Mom took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to reorient her guilt trip. James, he's your brother. I nodded, looking at her as I spoke. Yeah, and I've had his back longer than you ever have. Dad's expression darkened. You're being selfish. A genuine laugh escaped my lips, one that I couldn't hold back. Oh, that's rich coming from you. I gestured between them. You two decided that Ron deserved everything, and I got nothing. Now that the bills come due for your choice, you're trying to manipulate me into picking up the pieces. Not happening. Mom's voice sharpened. We thought you'd be mature about this. I raised an eyebrow. Mature? You mean silently accept that I've been betrayed and keep paying your bills? Let's be honest, that's what you were hoping for. Dad stepped forward, trying to tower over me the way he used to when I was younger. James, we raised you. We gave you everything. Food, clothes, shelter. The least you can do is help us now. I looked him square in the eye. I already did, for years, and you paid me back by cutting me out. Mom's lip quivered. We thought you'd understand. I exhaled, shaking my head. Oh, I understand, all right. I understand that I was never really family to you. I was just a paycheck. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. It hung in the air like a storm, ready to break. I turned to Ron, who had been avoiding eye contact, pretending he wasn't there. And you? I asked, my voice steady. What's your excuse? You had all these years to grow up, to get your act together, to actually contribute. But you didn't, because you knew they'd always take care of you. And when they're gone, you expected me to step in, didn't you? Ron finally snapped, his voice defensive. What do you want me to say, man? I didn't ask for this. I nodded slowly, the anger in my chest simmering. Right, you didn't ask. You just took. His mouth opened, then closed again. He had no response. Nothing to offer. Mom tried once more with the guilt. James, we're family. Family takes care of each other. I looked at her for a long, long moment before speaking. Exactly. So why didn't you take care of me? She froze, the words caught in her throat. There was no reply. Nothing at all. I exhaled slowly, the weight lifting off my chest for the first time in years. We're done here. I turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind me. Before I even made it back to my couch, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Wow. After everything we've done for you, you're really going to abandon us? I smirked as I typed back. Number you abandoned me. I'm just finally accepting it. I hit send, and then I blocked their numbers. But I had no idea that blocking them would only make things worse. It didn't take long for the situation to spiral out of control. Less than a day after I blocked them, I started noticing posts on Facebook. My parents were not exactly tech-savvy, but they sure knew how to air their grievances online, especially when they felt righteous. At first, I thought it was just their usual dramatic flair. I mean, airing out family drama was their specialty, right? But as I scrolled through their posts, it became clear this wasn't just about me not helping with the bills anymore. The posts were disguised as family love, but they were thinly veiled attacks on me. Mom had shared something about how she didn't raise her son to be so selfish, and how real family sticks together no matter what. A few of her friends had left comments criticizing me, claiming that I was a disappointment and completely out of touch with what truly matters. Then my dad joined the fray, posting his own message. So-called family should never turn their back on you when you need them most. We've given everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid. My son, who should be here helping us in our golden years, has chosen to abandon us. He tagged me in the post, adding a passive-aggressive comment, "I hope you're happy at the end of it." But the real punch came from Ron. I should have known he'd get involved in the drama. He shared a post filled with inaccuracies, claiming, "Some people think family is just about money. They don't get that family is about love and sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents, but some people are too wrapped up in themselves to realize that true love is about helping those who raised you." And of course, he threw in a veiled dig at me. I wish some people could learn what it really means to be family. I love my parents and I'm grateful for everything they've done. That was the final straw. I sat there, staring at my phone in disbelief. How had it gotten to this? They'd turned the entire situation around, painted me as the villain, the selfish son who didn't want to help his sacrificing parents, the son who took for granted all the love they had given me over the years. How could they do this to me? I had always been the one who worked tirelessly, who contributed, who never once complained. Now somehow they had convinced themselves they were in the right and had painted me as the problem. I couldn't react immediately. I decided to take a step back, give myself some time to collect my thoughts, and waited a few hours. I didn't want to rush into anything out of anger, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let them get away with this. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, I had to set the record straight. So I pulled out my phone and began typing. I opened my Facebook account, the one I used for close friends and real family, and posted a long, detailed update. I wasn't interested in playing their petty games. I wasn't going to get caught up in back and forth arguments. I just wanted the truth to be known. Here's what I wrote. I know I've been quiet for the past few days, but I can't stay silent any longer. My family has been sharing a lot of things online about me that simply aren't true. They've painted me as the villain, the selfish one who refuses to help my parents when they need it the most. I'm here to set the record straight. I've always supported my family. From the moment I could work, I've been the one paying bills, buying groceries, and doing everything I could to help. But there comes a point when you can't keep giving without receiving respect in return. Over the years, I've watched my parents shower Ron with everything: the house, the money, their attention. Meanwhile, I was just expected to keep giving, without ever being treated as an equal. Some of you might be reading this and thinking, well, that's just how family is. But here's the truth. Family should be a two-way street. When I found out that my parents had left everything to Ron in their will, it became clear how one-sided our relationship had been. They didn't even think to include me, not once. I've always been the one they could count on when things got tough, but never the one they actually wanted around unless it was convenient. For years, I've been the one funding their lifestyle. I've paid for vacations, helped with bills, even contributed to property taxes. And for what? To be treated like a backup plan? I'm done. I'm not just some bank account they can access whenever they need money. I'm a person, and I deserve respect. I've earned the right to be treated like I matter, not just when they need something from me. As for Ron, it's time he grew up. He's 28 years old and has never worked a day in his life. He's never taken responsibility for anything. My parents have enabled him for so long that it's no wonder he's their favorite. But here's the thing. He's had more than enough time to get his life together. And now, it's my turn to stand on my own. To everyone who has been following this saga and supporting my parents, I need you to understand. There are always two sides to every story. Yes, family is important, but so is respect. I've given enough of myself for a lifetime, and I won't apologize for stepping back. This isn't me abandoning my family. It's me choosing to finally prioritize myself. And to my parents, I wish you the best, but I am done being your punching bag. I hit post and immediately felt this wave of relief. For the first time, I was telling the truth about my family, the truth about how they had used me for years, how they always expected me to be their savior, without ever considering what I needed. I wasn't going to let their version of events define me anymore. The responses came fast. Some people I hadn't heard from in ages, reached out to offer their support. A few cousins, friends of my parents, even distant relatives liked the post, sent me private messages, telling me they were sorry for what I had been through. It felt liberating, finally letting the truth breathe, not buried under guilt and manipulation. But then came the backlash. My parents and Ron lost it. Ron sent me a message. "You're a traitor. You really had to put all our business out there like that? You have no respect for family." My dad called, practically screaming into the phone. "You've ruined everything, James. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. You'll regret turning your back on your own family." But I didn't regret it. Not for a second. I blocked them all. I was done. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the toxic hold they had on me for so long. As days passed, the weight I didn't even realize I was carrying started to lift. I was done being the one who was always expected to solve everyone else's problems. And now I was finally free to live my own life, on my terms. So, no, I don't feel guilty for cutting them off. I deserve better. I always have. From this point forward, I'm surrounding myself with people who value me for who I am, not for what I can do for them. It's time to move forward, for good, and I will. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.